such as the middle of the night, on a holiday, or in the midst of a hot summer's day when your UV packs it in. In my case, my air pump, the one you see here, it's an AirTech AP70 model, died on me the other day. I went down to check on the fish and found that there was no air coming out of the air stone at all. On further investigation, when I lifted the air stone up out of the water, there was a bit of air movement, but not what it normally should be. So fortunately, what I have done, and based on my learning over the years, is I have backups for pretty much all of the equipment that I have. I have a similar air pump, which is now installed and running on the pond. I have a backup pond pump, so if my pond packs it in, I can replace it with an exact same model, generally in under 15 minutes. I run a WV unit, so if one does fail, the other one is still going to function to give me protection for the pond as far as green water, etc. But what I thought I would do today, for those of you who may not be familiar with the AirTech pumps and replacing the diaphragms, is I'm going to show you how that's done, at least how I do it. I did go out a couple of days ago and purchase a replacement diaphragm kit. It does come with new units for both sides and the diaphragms for both sides. So I'm going to take the cover off this one now and show you what I believe might be the problem. Generally, when the air fails like that, it's because a diaphragm is either gotten very weak or, in some cases, it's actually torn. So what I'm going to do is just take the screws out of the cover here. There's 8 in total on this model. I do recommend that you always have a small container or something available to put the screws or any nuts and bolts in, so that they don't roll away from you and then you can't find them at a later time. And I've had that happen previously on other things, whether it's pond related or not. So I try to be very careful these days when I'm doing anything like that. Again, generally these are a very simple process for changing these, providing you have the necessary parts and of course the tools to go with them. So that is 5 of the screws out now, 3 more on this side, and I'll take the cover off and expose the interior workings of the pump. So just bear with me for a moment while I get these last couple of screws out. Last one. And the cover simply lifts off. That's all there is to it. Very simple to do. Now the air pump itself, as you can see, that is the inner workings of the pump. You have your air diaphragms, one on either side in this case. This is the electric component that causes the little arm in the middle to go back and forth, which actually activates the bellows or the diaphragms to pump the air in itself. It's got 4 screws holding it on, and then there's this little clamp that you simply squeeze and move out of the way. That will enable you then to remove the hose, because that'll have to come off in order to take this off of the pump itself. So the next step, as I said, is just simply to take this off so you can determine and try and see what is going on with the pump. And as I said, there are 4 screws, 2 top, 2 bottom. So this part of it is very easy to do. Again, you just want to make sure you don't lose parts, put them somewhere where they're not going to roll away on you. And the final screw will come out here in a moment. And then this piece on the front here simply lifts off out of the way. You can see it is rather dusty inside. That is just from the air and everything moving over. I've had it for a number of years. And then the this is the diaphragm itself, and this component here will come off in order to access the diaphragm. And on closer inspection of this one, it appears that the diaphragm is actually split or torn in a couple of places. So you have to take this nut off of here in order to get that off of the pump. Take that out now. And again, make sure you hang on up to all the components, in this case a little washer and a little nut. And this simply pulls off. And I don't know if I can kind of illustrate that enough. I can kind of do it this way. You'll see it, that the diaphragm has split in two places, which is why there is no air movement going through there whatsoever. So that is definitely garbage. This is the new kit. You can see nice and clean inside. This is the brand new diaphragm. Again, compared to the one that is split there, nice and solid. So this will then go back on the pump. I always recommend doing this one side at a time rather than taking it completely apart. If you make any kind of an error when you're putting it back together, or forget how a component goes into place, the last thing you want to have is be standing there kind of scratching your head, figuring out where did I go wrong. So now that that is back on, they also give you in the kit here some new washers and nuts to go on it. I'm going to just leave those in the bag because the ones that are here are perfectly fine, so I'll reuse those again. So that goes on. Again, the little nut goes back on. And I'll get that tightened up. And then again, it lines up into a recess on the metal plate itself to hold this in place. Just tighten that until it's secure. And then this component, it's all pre-assembled when you purchase a kit. It's that one there. So there's no need to take that apart or anything like that. Again, this lines up. You put it on, pretty straightforward. It does have little grooves here as to where it goes. And of course the outlet component is going to go back into that hose. So I will simply line this back up. And it should fit there, no problem. What I'm going to do next is get the screws in here to get it back into place. And hold it securely while I do that. And as long as you align the grooves in the plastic itself, then getting it back together is very, very simple. The bottom one over here, just kind of draw it in. That one tightened in place. Hopefully tightened in place there. Should go in just a moment with the screwdriver in there. Same thing on this side. Tighten it. Snug. Screw, there it is. This goes down in the bottom down here now. tighten into place. So, and then the air tube goes back on, and you bring the little clamp back up and around, squeeze it on, and just get it in place, and that's one side done. Now I am going to do the other side. I haven't checked that diaphragm yet, but it's better when you do the repairs like this. If one is gone, the other one is likely to go anytime, if not already. It could be kind of weak. So what I'm going to do is, it's the same process on the other side. I'm going to end things here just for a moment, and I'll get back to you once I have the other side on. I'll plug it in, give it a quick test run just to make sure the air and everything's working fine. And then I'll put the cover back on, so I'll be back with you in just a few moments. Alright, I'm back. The second diaphragm has been replaced inside the unit. I've put the cover back on. And as you can see, this is the original one that I had taken out to show you how damaged it is. This was the one on the other side of the unit. Still appears to be, in actually reasonably good condition. But considering the fact that the one is already blown, so to speak, and torn, the second one is likely or potentially could do the same thing without any notice at all, putting me back in a similar situation. So the pump is now restored. I'm just going to plug it in here for a moment. You'll be able to hear it. You won't obviously be able to see the air, but you'll be able to hear that it's working fine with the pieces inside. So as you can hear, it's a relatively quiet pump. Lots of air coming out of here now. So it's good to go and all set for when I need it again. What I will do is, this one now that it's had the replacements put in it, is going to become my backup unit. And the one that's downstairs, I had actually, running the pond right now, I had actually replaced the diaphragms on that about a year or so ago, somewhere in that range. And so this will now become my spare standby unit. And I actually have a third one of these pumps as well, so I have three altogether. One is running my indoor pond, and that runs all year round. The second one is connected to my outdoor pond. That runs the aerated bottom drain as well as the moving bed or the bio filters that I have on the pond. And then I do have another one as a spare. And just again, based on the way that I have my setups connected, it only takes a matter of 5 to 10 minutes to swap an air pump out, one for the other, so the fish are never without oxygen for any more than a few minutes. The kit itself for this particular pump was $60, and it's certainly a lot less than the $300 or $400 or more it would be to buy another pump. So I do recommend to anybody who has koi ponds or even a goldfish pond where you're relying on aeration in the pond, which ideally you were doing, aeration to run a bottom drain or to run a moving bed filter, that you get yourself a backup air pump. It doesn't have to be an expensive one. It doesn't have to be a duplicate of what you've already got. If the pump does fail and you've got a backup, the primary thing, in my opinion, is to get air into the pond, even if your moving bed is not working properly at that point. Aeration in the pond and the oxygenation is the most important thing, to help keep the fish healthy and alive, especially in the hotter summer temperatures when the water warms up. And there's less oxygen in there. So as long as you've got that backup air pump as an emergency, if you will, then that's great. If you can afford an exact copy or a newer model of the one that you're using on your pond now, I would recommend doing that also. As I mentioned, for my backups, the pond pump that I do have for the outdoor pond, it's a 4,280 gallon an hour Laguna pump. I actually have an identical one of those. I purchased two at the same time. So one runs a pump. It's been running very, very well. It's cleaned each year. Great little pump. But in the event that the impeller snaps or something goes wrong with it, again, in 10 to 15 minutes, I can swap it out for the replacement, and I know the pond and the filters and everything are up and running very, very quickly. And as I mentioned, even with my UVs, I generally have a couple of spare bulbs on hand. So although I do change them once a season, if for some reason one should fail, I do have a backup that I can swap the bulb out very quickly to take care of things. So in a nutshell, that's kind of it again. My recommendation to anyone out there is, if you can, get a backup for your major components, for your pump, your air pump, UV if necessary. It can save you a lot of headaches. It'll save you a lot of time if you can swap things out. And as I said, most of these things, at least in my experience, tend to happen at the most inopportune time. You know, you're heading out for an appointment or off to work, or it's a long holiday weekend and the stores are not open, or it happens, you know, late at night when the stores have been closed at the end of the day, and that's the time you might need these things the most. And if you don't have it accessible, you can run into problems with your fish. So that's it for my kind of 2 cents worth for today. Again, this is one of the, it's an Evolution Aqua, as you can see here, and it's one of the older ones. The AP70 pump works very, very well. Great little pump, and I recommend, as I said, if you can get one, to replace the one that you currently have running on the pond. In the event of a failure, it's going to save you so much time and definitely headaches, because the last thing you want to do is lose any of your fish due to low oxygen or something like that if there's a major failure of one of the components in the system. I hope you find that interesting. Certainly feel free to leave your comments below, and if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated. And thank you all. Stay safe and have a great day.